You mentioned earlier that you had done 8 years in prison. I want to take you back. I know it was more than 2 decades ago. I don't know the exact amount of time,
It
but
was.
when you initially
I've been out for 10 years, over 10 years.
and you did
Not
8
11.
years. Okay, so maybe almost 2 decades ago. Tell me about the first day you went in. Your mindset at that point in time of your life, and what do you remember about that day?
So I remember early on,
The very first day.
the first day is kind of like you still got everything in your head that you were doing beforehand, and it's hard to like program to get that out and to adjust to where you are, and then to get your mind wrapped around where you're going to be going.
Did you have some really dark
there.
moments?
Yes, but I think that the in pretrial, here in Atlanta, I began to have like this. I'm going in with an exit strategy.
Wow, back then you had an exit strategy.
And so I started teaching classes on credit in pre-trial holding.
Really?
Yes. And at the time that I started teaching, because I would go to the law library and I would have them to print me up information, and I would come back and I would teach. I would read it first in the cell, and then I would teach it in the day room. Wow. I would have them sit down, and then they start letting us use the little room that they use for church services, and they would use that room for me to actually teach them. And it was an exit strategy for me. I needed to learn something that I could actually turn myself into a legit person outside of here. And so it was learning everything was my exit strategy to get out.
So that focus started while you were actually in prison. Do you feel that going through that pain, and going through that struggle and that hardship, do you think that actually contributed to the level of success that you have today?
Yes. It's the discipline. It's a discipline. So I knew that I would have, because of the success, by the time I met you there, I had been incarcerated probably about 6 years. And I knew that I would be successful. When I met you, my class was so in demand. I had everybody, they would sit out in the hallways. The people who couldn't take my class would sit in the hallways, and every possible seat was filled, and they sat on the floors and everything else to hear what it is I had to say.
I remember that.
So and then the educators and the officers and everything else would come to me on the side and all during the week to ask me questions.
Not just the inmates?
Yeah, not just the inmates.
And the educators?
Yes. And I did their credit. And they would bring
me
their
wives. The credit of the COs?
The officers, the lieutenants, everybody. Wow. Everybody.
Okay.
So, and they brought their wives' credit reports and everything else, and they would bring it to me and tell me to prepare their disputes and how. And then once it became knowledge that I was cleaning up the staffs, then you sort of like got all kind of perks and everything else. But I worked in the kitchen the whole time.
Okay.
So I never did. So I was trying to lose weight. I left there skinny. I was like you.
But what I mean is you got whatever you wanted out of the kitchen.
Yeah, I got whatever I wanted, but I worked in the kitchen.
Okay, so you got it anyway.
So I got that anyway. Okay. But I was more concerned with the knowledge of how to do it. Doing staff, it's one thing to do the inmates. And that taught you, because they would bring their it was mandatory to get your credit report. You had to have get your copies of the credit reports in order to take my class. And during the course of you taking my class, I would clean up all of your credit.
Wow.
So by the time the class was over with for that group of students, I would have cleaned up everybody's credit, and then I'm ready for the next group.
Wow.
And so the warden made it mandatory that everybody had to take my class. Wow. It was mandatory.
Really? So you put together a whole strategy while you were in prison?
Yes.
And then you executed when you came out?
Yes. And so, but I thought, my thinking was, I'm going to be successful I'm going to have a cool apartment, and I'm going to have this basic car, and I never thought of a house. I just thought, just have this basic life, and I'll be successful.
Okay, well, you
And
answered
that's
my
how
next
I
question.
call. That's what I called success. I never had any idea of a celebrity or anything else. That never crossed my mind.
Okay.